Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, the Raiders start off the season 1-0 with a 17-16 victory over the Denver Broncos. That plus a whole lot more comes up on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, September 11th, 2023.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. Of course, as always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, that's because of my man Ari. We appreciate you, and we appreciate my man Ari. Without you checking out the YouTube page, wouldn't matter if it was there or not. So we definitely appreciate you, Raider Nation, for all the support of the Locked On Raider podcast YouTube channel, but also my man Ari. If it wasn't for him, it wouldn't be there either. So many thanks to Ari for doing a fantastic job each and every day. You can check him out on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up on Twitter as well at your boy Q254. And you know, we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. The Raiders start off the season 1-0 with a 17-16 victory over the Denver Broncos. So we got a lot of calls and texts coming up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, going to talk about what I've talked about all offseason, all training camp, all preseason. Talk about that Raiders defense, the good, the bad, the ugly, that got it done. We'll talk about the Raiders defense coming up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, news and notes, which after a game is really breaking down the game, talking about what happened, giving you a few of the numbers, handing out a few game balls, and like I said, just going ahead and passing along some nuggets that had to do with the Raiders' victory. And if the Raiders lose at a game, then we'll still break it down. But in this case, the Raiders start off the 2023 season 1-0 with a 17-16 victory over Denver. And by the way, they're the only team in the AFC West that won a game. So KC 0-1, Chargers 0-1, Broncos obviously 0-1. The Raiders sitting there at 1-0. So good stuff, good stuff. Before we get to anything, though, I do want to let you know that today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. They help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And also, before I jump into anything Raiders related, talking about news and notes, defense, calls and texts, I do want to remember, and I always want to remember, September 11th. Always remember September 11th, 2001. Every time that this date comes around, and the month of September is already an emotional month for me, but man, every time September 11th comes back, all I can do is flash back to the moment where I was at exactly when I heard about the attacks on the World Trade Center, on the Pentagon, everything that was going on, again, September 11th, 2001. And I tell anyone who will listen that I was in a car riding to Fremont, California on my way to my job at a Kirby. I was selling Kirby's at the time, and we were on our way to Fremont, to the hub, and we were about to get into our teams and drive out and try to sell Kirby's. Now, we did try to sell Kirby's that day. Bad decision. But we be that as it may, it's not about the Kirby's that I want to talk about. Just definitely want to make sure we always remember the significance of September 11th, 2001, and remember, you know, each and every family that lost plenty of family members. I mean, our world changed forever, right? I mean, there were so many families that were affected by the World Trade Center hit, the Pentagon hit. The way we travel, the way we do a lot of things now is totally different because of what happened on that terrible day, September 11th, 2001. So many thoughts and prayers to anyone who's out there and has some family members affected by that. As far as I'm concerned, everyone had family members affected by that because it has to do with the country. So just want to show some love on this September 11th. Don't ever want to think that, you know, football is too big, that we can't take a couple seconds to show respect where it's due. And I always want to show respect to the armed forces, the Army, the Navy, the military, whatever armed force you work in or have family members that work in. We thank you, because without you, there is none of us either. So many thanks to everyone out there, the military, everyone that fights for our freedoms each and every day. But definitely let's not ever forget what happened on September 11th, 2001. So now let's go ahead and jump into the game. The Raiders win 17-16 versus Denver. They improved to 1-0 on the season as they get ready to take on the Buffalo Bills on the road. Just by the numbers, Jimmy G, 20 for 26, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Very effective day. Didn't like the interception, obviously. It was a tip ball. He tried to force it in there to Amir Abdullah. It bounced up in the air. And, of course, well, the Broncos came down with the interception, stopped the Raiders from scoring any points at all, which was bad. As far as on the ground, the Raiders didn't have a very good day rushing. They carried the ball as a team 29 times for 61 yards. Nobody was effective on the ground. Josh Jacobs, Zamir White, nobody. Didn't really matter. They couldn't really get the run game going. And honestly, the Broncos did everything they could to bottle up Josh Jacobs. And he's going to continue to work and get himself into football shape. But I don't think he's far off, right? I mean, I know that some will look and be like, oh, he's not in good shape. I think he's really close. Even though he missed all of training camp, he's probably a lot closer than most people expect. So I think he's going to continue to grind and grind and grind. He did the very best he could, but as a team, the Raiders didn't do very well on the ground. Jacoby Myers, he was the leading receiver, 9 catches, 81 yards, 2 touchdowns, left the game with a concussion. A very bad hit that he took at the end from Kareem Jackson, just unnecessary. The league has been taking those kind of hits out of the game for a very long time, and Kareem Jackson just drilled them and obviously got the Raiders an extra 15 yards because of that penalty, but hopefully Jacoby Myers is okay, left the game with a concussion. And if he wasn't a concussion, I mean, he went out there with concussion symptoms, and then all of a sudden he was ruled out. So, of course, there'll be more tests throughout the course of the week, but hopefully he's able to return sooner rather than later. Devontae Adams, 6 catches, 66 yards. Josh Jacobs, 2 catches, 23 yards. And then Austin Hooper, DeAndre Carter, Zamir White all had 1 catch each. So nothing spectacular as far as offense goes. It wasn't like they lit it up. Then again, they only scored 17 points, but the Denver Broncos have a really good defense, and I thought the Raiders did just enough, which obviously they did, to win the game 17-16. Defensively, Nate Hobbs, 12 tackles, 2 tackles for losses, and a quarterback hit. Divine Diablo, 9 tackles, a tackle for loss, and a pass breakup. Spillane, 7 tackles, and a tackle for loss. Crosby, 5 tackles, a sack, tackle for loss, 2 QB hits. The Raiders ended the game with 2 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, 5 quarterback hits. Denver had 0 sacks, a tackle for loss, and 3 quarterback hits throughout the course of the game. So not bad for the Raiders defense, but of course we'll talk a lot more about them coming up in segment number 2. Well, penalties, that was an issue. The Raiders had 10 penalties for 97 yards. They just can't have that. And they had awful penalties at awful times, and it just reminded me of what always happens with the silver and black. But false start by Illuminor when they can't have it. Masterson, personal foul on the punter when they were getting off the field, can't have it. Peters, illegal contact on what would have been a Wilson fumble and a Raiders recovery. They give the ball back to Denver. Can't happen. And even though I think that was a suspect penalty, I think that Russell Wilson was outside the pocket. It was an obvious penalty when you look at the way that Peters contacted the wide receiver. It wasn't like he even tried to get out of the way. He just was basically like, hey, I'm going to tackle you because you're about to blow right by me. That was Mims, as a matter of fact. Mims from Denver was about to fly right past him, so he grabbed him. Well, I think that Russell Wilson was out of the pocket, and so really that shouldn't have been an illegal contact, but he didn't even try to hide it. So that was bad. Illegal formation at the goal line forces the Raiders back a few yards, and then they end up throwing that interception, and it just doesn't turn into any kind of points. Those kind of penalties. 10 penalties in general, 97 yards, you just can't do it. You're not going to beat good teams. They have a good team coming up this week. Now, we'll see what Buffalo looks like later on this evening as they're taking on the Jets, Monday Night Football. We'll see what Buffalo looks like, but I'm expecting them to be a pretty good team. You're not going to beat good teams by giving up 100 yards in penalty yardage. You're just not, right? And so Denver, I didn't think that they were a very good team. They had moments on Sunday where they looked good, but all in all, to me, they're not a very good team, and the Raiders were able to get the victory as I expected them to do. And even though, like I said, it wasn't pretty, it was still a victory. And, well, that, at the end of the day, is what matters. Also, wanted to give out a couple game balls real quick. I mentioned Jacoby Myers. Big game. Big-time game. I mentioned him on Friday when I was talking about keys to victory. Everyone's going to focus in on 17. Don't forget about 16. 16 had a big game. 2 things that stood out to me is that he is very comfortable with just getting open and making himself available, right? And that's a good thing. And I think he's going to really benefit from having 17 across from him. There's going to be so many times where he's going to have that one-on-one coverage, and it's going to be loose coverage. There's going to be guys shading over on Devontae. Jacoby's in line for a really good season. Again, hopefully he comes back after that big hit that forced him out of the game. Hopefully he's okay with that. I will say the penalty that he had, the taunting penalty after his first touchdown, that just can't happen. You cannot have that. Act like you've been there before, and he has. He knows better than that. There's just no reason. I don't know what kind of trash talking was going on, but you can't have that. You cannot have those. That's an unnecessary penalty. That, again, led to those 97 yards, those 10 penalties and 97 yards. Those are the kind of mistakes you just can't have. So, but a game ball definitely to Jacoby Myers, who had himself one hell of a game. Jimmy G, in my opinion, also gets a game ball, 20 for 26, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, and interception. I loved his attitude. He got hit on the very first drive of the game, a late hit by Denver and by Justin Simmons, as a matter of fact, and he laid there, and you could tell that it bothered him. He got hit a little bit, and I know he later said that he was trying to sell the late hit on him or whatever, but the way that he got angry and the way that he got mad when they pulled him out of the game to check for a concussion, he was like, wait, no, I'm fine. And he runs off the field and goes into the blue tent and comes back. I love that attitude. I love the willingness to run the ball. Right? If it's not there, I'll go run and pick up a couple yards. He was not willing to, take a bad play. He didn't do any bad plays, and he was able to take off. I thought that for the majority of the time for the game, he made a lot of really good decisions. Again, that one he tried to force in there to Abdullah. He was there. It just happened to bounce up in the air and land in the arms of the Denver Broncos. But for the most part, I thought Jimmy G had a really good game. As a matter of fact, after the game, Max Crosby and Davante Adams both spoke on Jimmy Garoppolo. Check this out.
Big moments he stepped up, and it goes vice versa. The defense, when we needed to stop, we stepped up. So that's how you win football games. It's got to be complementary football. We all got to believe in the guy next to us, and like I said, Jimmy's a dog. So I'm super excited for him. I'm happy he's my quarterback.
Jimmy's a gamer, man. I'm not gonna put any added extra unnecessary pressure on him, but that's the type of guy that we've seen, on the other side of the conference And it's fun going out there playing with him. The way he commanded the huddle today, just his cool, his poise. He threw some dots. He hit Kobe over the middle with some guys in his face, showing that type of toughness and resolve after going and throwing a pick in a situation where we obviously need points. That's what you need from one of your leaders.
So there you go. You hear Max Crosby, Davante Adams, two leaders of this Raiders teams, talking about what Jimmy G has, and that it's a pleasure to go out there and play alongside him. And, Max Crosby calling him a dog, and Davante saying that that's the kind of guy that you need to have. And look, Jimmy G missed Davante a couple times. There was a couple times where I thought Davante could have a touchdown if Jimmy G pulled the trigger, but he just saw him too late. And he even went up to him after the game and told him, hey, man, my bad. I saw you late, didn't get the ball to you. That's on me. But still went out there and played really well, especially after that interception. Went out there with ice water in his veins and just went ahead and led the Raiders down the field to score that touchdown. And then Max Crosby, he gets my third game ball, 5 tackles, a sack, tackle for loss, 2 QB hits, but really he destroyed one whole drive. All right, there was one drive where he forces a holding penalty. And really, he got held many times. Looked like Tillery got held many times. There was a lot of guys that I thought were getting held by the Broncos that weren't called. But Max gets a holding penalty called on Denver. He forces that. Very next play, he has a sack. Very next play after that, he forces a quick pass from Russell Wilson to the other side, opposite side, away from Max, right? Almost like a screenplay that I believe Devon Diablo blew up, and that was a tackle for loss. So it was, at that point, it was like 3rd and 34 or something. That was Max Crosby to the T right there, and he just really dominated. And I saw that the Raiders, Patrick Graham and company, moved him around the formation defensively a lot, right? They didn't just stick him in one spot. They moved him around. So that's kind of what I expected them to do. And so I'm looking forward to them continuing to do that. But Max Crosby definitely gets a game ball. So those are the 3 that I'm handing out: Jacoby Myers, Jimmy G, and Max Crosby. If I'm missing somebody that you think needs a game ball, please let me know about it. 707-654-4693. That's the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line. Of course, that's coming up in segment number 3. And again, the penalties just need to be cleaned up. 10 for 97. Illuminor with the false start. Masterson with the personal foul. Peters illegal contact, illegal formation at the goal line, the after the play for Jacoby Myers with the taunting penalty, those kind of things, you got to eliminate those. You're not going to beat good teams if you continue to do that. But I want to talk about the defense. I know a lot of people are frustrated. We've been talking about the defense for a very long time. A lot of people are frustrated by the defense. They weren't stellar on Sunday at all. But without the defense making the plays that they made on Sunday, the Raiders don't win that game. We'll talk about the defense coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, and we'll do it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. All you got to do is post your free job post on LinkedIn Jobs. Then add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and who you'd like to hire. It's why small businesses rank LinkedIn Jobs number 1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs will help you find that qualified candidate you want to talk to faster. Right now, post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to talk about that Raiders defense. I've been talking about that defense all offseason, all training camp, all preseason, and of course talked about it quite a bit leading up to week 1's game versus the Denver Broncos. I was hoping that Raiders defense was going to go out there and make a play, either cause a strip sack, fumble, get the fumble recovery, an interception, come up with some turnover. They didn't, even though they did, right? Russell Wilson fumbled and Devon Diablo recovered it, but it was called back because of a penalty. Again, you've got to clean that up. You can't have those kind of opportunities and then just give them right back. And honestly, I look at the play Masterson made when he ran into the punter and it was a personal foul penalty. I look at that as a turnover on the Raiders, right? Because they're off the field. Their defense literally got off the field and they're getting the ball back. And then because of that dumb play by Luke Masterson, they have to give the ball back. So those were some negatives. But, you know, for what I'm looking at as far as this Raiders defense, I thought they did all right. And really, when they needed to step up the most, they really did. And remember, just remember, this was week 1 for everybody across the league. I'm not making that exclusive for the Raiders at all, because across the league, you saw some really good play and you saw some really poor play. Like, I don't think that the Raiders and Broncos are going to be 17-16 final score week 18. I just don't see that, right? I just think that week 1 across the league, there's going to be a lot of sloppy on both sides of the ball, and then there's going to be a lot of good. Like you saw what the Cowboys did Sunday night, right? Put up a 40-piece on the Giants. Okay, that was great. They were clicking on all cylinders. But, you know, is that what they're going to be next week? So there's still a feeling out process, and this is really the first time that this Raiders defense played all together. But I tweeted out immediately after the game, and I really tried to stay very low profile on Twitter on Sunday. I was not at the game in Denver. I was at the house relaxing. So days like that, I tried to just stay off of Twitter and not really get too active. I know a lot of people hit me up, but the reason I don't really focus in on Twitter is because, well, I'm at the house trying to relax. So, week 3, I don't know about the Buffalo trip, but week 3 at Allegiant Stadium, of course, I'll be very active. I'll be at the game. But with that being said, I tweeted out right after the game, Raiders get the W, 1-0 on the season. Obviously, we'll discuss a lot on the Locked On Raiders podcast and on Raider Nation Radio 920, but the defense played a major role in the Raiders getting the win. It was bad at times, but it was also big when they needed it the most. Hashtag Raiders. That was for me immediately after the game. And look, I know it wasn't pretty. 3rd and long is still an issue, right? And that's something that's got to get cleaned up, right? You can't have 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11, and be playing so far off in zone that it's an easy pitch and catch for whoever it is. Again, you're not going to beat really good teams if those are the problems that you have. Early on in the game, especially the first half, the Broncos offense was able to do pretty much anything they wanted to against the Raiders defense. They weren't close enough. The cornerbacks weren't close enough to the wide receivers. The run defense wasn't very good. There was not a whole lot to like about the Raiders defense, but then you still look at it and realize the Broncos were only up 3 points at halftime. So I got a tweet at halftime from this guy, Davey, at MSGTO811. All those folks saying 3 wins for the Raiders look pretty smart right now. LOL. Defense is an absolute joke. Cut everyone and fire PG. 20-7 guaranteed first drive of the 3rd quarter. That was the tweet that I got. And of course, I didn't get it. I didn't really get it till after the game. That's when I noticed it. But that was the feeling of not just Davey, but a lot of the fans. That's why I bring that up, because a lot of the fans were feeling the same way. Well, after halftime, what happened? Russell Wilson only threw for 47 passing yards. Think about that. And there wasn't a whole lot of possessions. That's another thing. This game was kind of wonky because there wasn't a whole lot of possessions. What, the Raiders have like 6 possessions? They think 3 in the second half, period. Like, that's not very much at all. So you've got to take advantage and make the most of every possession you get. But they held Russell Wilson to 47 yards passing in the second half, 177 total yards and 2 touchdowns. The Broncos did really good on the ground as far as I was concerned. They had 94 yards rushing on 22 carries. But for the most part, when the Raiders needed to have a stop and make a play, they did. When they forced the Broncos to kick that field goal at the end of the game, that only put the Broncos up 6 points, instead of the Broncos all of a sudden being up like 9, or not 9, it would have been 10 points, right? Now all of a sudden you're down double digits. So the Raiders defense stepped up. As I mentioned before in segment number 1, Max Crosby, he was getting after it all game, but he, that one drive that he had, he really made it happen. He forced the whole issue basically on his own. Like 3 plays in a row, he was so, as a matter of fact about. Guys like Jacorian Bennett, I have hope for. When I see guys out there like Bennett, I feel pretty good about where he's at. Now, he's a guy that also contributed to the penalties for the Raiders on Sunday that you can't have. He has got to be, and this is something I cautioned on Friday, is like he is a guy that's going to get penalties. He's going to have to be very much more disciplined when it comes to his hands. He's very, handsy. He's very physical. You like the physicality, but you got to realize he's got to be able to do it in a legal way and, not have penalties. Now, he was about to get beat, and he, grabbed the wide receiver at the top of the route. Cortland Sutton, matter of fact. He grabbed him at the, 20-yard line. Penalty right there. But then he grabbed him again to make sure that, okay, he's not going to make this play at all. So, I mean, he hit him a couple times. But what I like about Jacorian Bennett and what gives me hope is that he's willing to go in there and tackle. Man, he's a guy who has no problem. Him and Nate Hobbs both have no problems getting in there and tackling a guy that's got the ball, right? Some corners, they want to back away. Like Marcus Peters, he's not a great tackler. And I'm sure he'll be the first to say that, yeah, he'll get involved in the mix, but he don't want to really be in the mix. You know what I mean? So, but Jacorian Bennett, he's a guy that doesn't mind the physicality. He wants to get into the mix. And so when he's going up in run support and making tackles and, open field tackles where it's just him and a wide receiver and he's got to make a play and he's able to do it, that gives me hope. Trayvon Merrick didn't have a good game, but he did have one big tackle where it was just him and I think Samaje Perine. Might have been someone else. I'm not too sure. But if he doesn't make the tackle, it's a first down and the Broncos drive continues. Instead, Trayvon Merrick made the tackle, got him off the field. It was about 5-something left in the game. The Raiders get the ball back and never give it back. Right? I mean, it was just very important that they got that play, and that's what helped them win that game. Again, the defense wasn't great. It has a long ways to go. It really does. But you could see glimpses of hope of, okay, they do have a little something. Again, they held the Broncos to 16 points, and 13 of them they gave up by halftime. So they only gave up 3 points in the second half. So if you're upset, and I get it, where there was obviously things to look at and say, yeah, that's got to get cleaned up, right? The corners have got to play tighter. The safeties got to play tighter, right? The linebackers have got to be better. Everyone's got to be better. But, again, you hold the Broncos to 16 points and only 3 in the second half. You can't be too upset about that. Guy that I said I think was going to have a big year or could potentially be in line for a big year that we aren't talking about, Jerry Tillery, even though he had a penalty, a pretty bad penalty early in the first half where he jumped off sides and was trying to get after the quarterback. And unfortunately for him, he was off sides and gave the Broncos an automatic first down. But he had a sack later on in the game. Crosby had a sack. So, I mean, you could see him getting after it. And it was pretty wild the way to see that Patrick Graham actually had Jerry Tillery involved early. I didn't know who was going to fill in for Chandler Jones not being there. And Jerry Tillery was the guy playing on the outside. So that shows you his versatility. Again, something that this Raiders team is looking for, guys that are versatile that could do many different things. Now, one part of that defense that was disappointing on Sunday, Tyree Wilson, the rookie out of Texas Tech. He clearly is not in game shape yet. And on top of that, the problem is he did some good things in that Cowboy preseason game. But since he didn't make the plays, and I'm sure he heard 2 weeks of people talking about, well, it's nice to almost get there, and it's nice to be able to show your strength, but you got to make the play. You could see what he was doing. A lot of people said, oh, he's just slow. That's not the case. He's not slow off the line of scrimmage. He's thinking. The problem is he's trying to watch and analyze to see what's happening before he attacks. You can't do that. What he's doing is when the ball is hiked, he is looking to see, okay, is it a run or a pass? How do I attack? No, when the ball is snapped, you've got to attack immediately. So that's got to get coached out of him right away. That's got to be one of those Patrick Graham, Rob Leonard. They've got to get on him immediately and say, hey, stop thinking. A thinking man is a slow man. And so what he's doing, where everyone says, oh, he's slow off the line of scrimmage, he's not slow off the line of scrimmage. We've seen him be fast, but he wasn't thinking. He was just going out there and playing. He's got to get away from thinking. He's just got to go out there and be like, okay, whatever got me here, I got to keep doing. Yeah, I mean, he didn't make the plays in Dallas. That's fine. He's got to make the plays now. So in the amount of snaps that he had, there was nothing that was out there too exciting. Nothing to write home about and be like, man, I see why the Raiders drafted him number 7 overall. He's got to get out of his own head. He obviously, like I said, knows that he didn't make the plays against the Cowboys. He's probably heard people talking about him for multiple weeks that, he's not making plays. He's got to make the play. He's got to be better than that. And so now he's trying to overcompensate for it. You can't do that. You just got to go out there and play. But Nate Hobbs being back in the slot, I think that's really good. Marcus Peters, I think he still needs to continue to round into game shape. Felt like he was playing too far off of the wide receivers, giving him way too much cushion. But he's not the Marcus Peters of young, right? The Kansas City Chief or the Ram. He's not that fast. So when there's a wide receiver that's quick like Mims, he doesn't want him to go by him. So he's so far off of him that it's an easy pitch and catch. So a couple things to like. I like Marcus Epps. I like him flying around, even though Him and Merrick both gave up a touchdown at the end of the end zone, back of the end zone. Just feel like that their communication wasn't right. And Merrick, I think Merrick really needs to step up. I think Merrick is going to have to step up, or he might see Isaiah Palomalo in there sooner rather than later. All right, I know he got injured in the game and hurt his thumb and had a wrap on it for the second half of the game. He actually didn't even start the second half. He was in the X-ray room, got it, like I said, got his thumb wrapped up. But he's just got to be better. If he's not going to be better, then they've got to do something else. I like Trayvon Merrick. I liked him a lot when he was at TCU, but he ain't at TCU anymore. He ain't in the Big 12 anymore. It's the NFL. You got to step up, make some plays. So he's got to have to continue to grow. And I don't know what it's going to take, but either Roderick Teamer, who they put into the game to start the second half at safety, or Isaiah Palomalo is going to be out there playing instead of Trayvon Merrick if he can't get his stuff together. And there was a time in that game where I thought, okay, Merrick's about to have to hit the bench. But, he came back in, and like I said, he did make that big tackle. That was very, very important. So, just, again, Malcolm Kuntz, I thought he was good, in place of Chandler Jones. Who knows what's going to happen with Chandler Jones? I don't expect him to ever play with the Raiders again. I'm expecting them to move on from him sooner rather than later. I just don't know what that entails and how that's going to come about, but I'm sure that they're working on something behind the scenes, and I'm sure that Chandler's working on something behind the scenes. Again, everything that's unraveled with Chandler Jones has been very unfortunate, not for the football player, not for the football team, but for the man. So I'm hoping that he's able to get better and get right sooner rather than later. But as far as, the defense being, back and bad and a really good shutdown unit, they're not that. They're not even close to that right now. But I did see enough signs of okay, there's hope there. That was a good play. That was a good play. That was a good series, right? There was enough to look at and say, okay, I can understand why people are getting excited about this defense, but it still has a long ways to go. The good thing is Max Crosby's still Max Crosby, and he's still out there doing Max Crosby type things. So if the rest of the defense, I think they have a little bit of an attitude, which is good. I like that attitude that they have and the way that they're going out there and playing. They just got to go out and they got to make more plays. And so Buffalo is going to be a big test coming up on Sunday. Again, it'll be the home opener for the Buffalo Bills and the second game in a row, the Raiders on the road. But all in all, if you hold a team to 16 points, you're giving your team an opportunity to win. And at the end of the day, that's what the Raiders did. They just won the game, so they're 1-0 on the season. Only team in the AFC West with a W. What's on your mind? Your calls and texts are coming up next, 707-654-4693. That'll come up after I tell you about FanDuel. And now that the NFL season is here, get ready for these incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, all new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy and it's easy to use, and you can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Kick off the NFL season with the offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel is the official partner of the NFL. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and text straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Went a little long there in segment 1 and 2, so we're only going to have time for a couple calls and texts. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Raider X, he's up first. He's calling to give his overall thoughts on the game. Here he is, Raider X.
Hey, Q. This is Raider X calling about the Raiders win. 7 in a row against the Donkeys. Yes, baby. Love it. A little bit sloppy. Hiccups. Was a grind-out game. Obviously low scoring. The defense showed up from Denver, and the Raiders' defense obviously closed the game. Really happy about the overall play. I know it's going to get even better with Jimmy G at the helm. I like the way that, very, very efficient game. There could be some things of improvement, but, I think that being the first game, I think there was a lot of good signs of the mobility and the things that got done. Like the play calling was a pretty efficient game. Obviously, we got to see Tyree Wilson loosen up and improve upon this pass rush. Look at the interior defensive line. Still has a lot of improvement to do. Hopefully, Tyree Wilson starts playing a little faster. It looks like he's a little bit hesitant to truly just pin the in based upon his learning lessons during the preseason. I'd like to get your thoughts, but I'm stoked. 1-0. And the AFC West, #1. At this moment, let's hold on to it. Raiders took another in Denver. Love it. Raider X out. Raiders!
Thank you for the call, my man. I appreciate you. And yeah, the good thing is there's a ton of cleanup work to do, right? But I'd rather the Raiders have to clean up their issues and what they didn't do well, and they'd be 1-0, as opposed to they had a lot of cleanup work to do and they're 0-1, right? It's much easier and it's a lot better situation to have to clean up when you're winning as opposed to having to clean up and you're losing. You're desperate for a victory. Last year, the Raiders got their first win of the season in October. This year, they get their first win of the season week 1. That's a much better statement from the Silver and Black. It's a big-time improvement from the Raiders, and I can appreciate that. Thanks for the call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Gio in Northridge. He says, hey, Q, it's Gio from Northridge. I'll make this text quick and simple. Not a nice win, but hey, I'll take it. Normally, I'm overcritical on the team even if we win, but I'm enjoying this game and the season for what it is. We're really missing Chandler Jones out there, and you can see it. We have to stop shooting ourselves in the foot with these penalties. I think we already lead the league in penalties in this new season. I really hope Jacoby Myers is going to be okay and come back sooner rather than later, of course, if he's cleared. But our wide receiver room is deep, and I think we should be fine. I'm a little worried for Renfro. He's been MIA all game, and I hope we can find a way to get him more involved. Last but not least, the Raiders are the only one standing tall in the AFC West right now. I know it's early and silly, but hey, I'm enjoying the small things. Glad football's back. Let's go Raiders. That's Gio in Northridge. And yeah, that's the one thing I can say. Hopefully Jacoby Myers does come back healthy and he's able to play this week against Buffalo. But Hunter Renfrow was a no factor on Sunday. No targets, no catches, no nothing. So if Jacoby's not able to go, like he said, like Gio said, the wide receiver room is deep. So Hunter could probably get involved. And I'm interested to see how they use him moving forward because he shouldn't be a guy that gets no targets. But when the connection between Jimmy G and Jacoby was the way it was, I'm not mad at that. Plus, again, remember, very little possessions. I think the Raiders had the ball like 6 times max. That's not good. And that's, and the Broncos didn't have it much more. So we'll see. But thank you so much for that text. I appreciate you. Next up, got a call from Nate Glass. He's calling to congratulate Raider Nation for the 1-0 start after beating the Denver Broncos.
Hey, Q, it's your boy Nate Glass. Calling you from Cali. Just want to congratulate Raider Nation on the win. Division win, statement win. Wish I could join the win party with y'all. But, y'all did what y'all supposed to do. We didn't. We got our ass whooped. But it's all good. You know what I'm saying? At least I'll take 1 out of 2 wins for the day. It's all good. But, anyway, I hope y'all made it out of the game fine. I didn't check the injury report. Not yet, but I hope y'all made it to the game healthy as can be. And look forward to your next week opponent against Buffalo. And like I said, good win. And the Q, looking forward to the podcast. And talk to you soon.
Nate, thanks so much for the call. I appreciate you. And look, a win is a win, especially week 1. I believe it was a good win. You go on the road. You take on the Broncos with a new head coach, with a team that's ready to try to snap their losing streak against you, 6 in a row, now 7 in a row. Crowd is pumped up, fired up, and, well, you go and you find a way to get a W. I'm okay with that. And, now they got to play Buffalo on a short week. I think you'll learn a lot about the Raiders this upcoming week. I think Buffalo is a lot better team than Denver. And if the Raiders have as many penalties as they had on Sunday and don't convert when they're, in scoring range, I mean, look, I always talk about the red zone. You got to score touchdowns. You got to get some points, right? I mean, they left points on the board multiple times. You just can't do that, right? I mean, they left that out there. They didn't get anything when they were right there, first and goal at the 1-yard line. Jimmy fumbles the ball. That was on him. Second play, I thought was a bad play call. I thought that Josh Jacobs should have got the ball there. They tried to throw it. There was a legal formation, so that backed him up. Then it was an incompletion. Then, they had to, then it was the interception. I mean, then, Jimmy rolls out, tries to throw it to Amir Abdullah. It pops up in the end zone, and, intercepted. So they're not going to be able to operate like that. You just can't do that, not against a Buffalo Bills team that I do expect to be a really good team. Again, we'll see what they look like tonight, but you start off 1-0, you're heading to Buffalo, you got to feel pretty good about yourself. So, Nate, thanks so much for that call. I do appreciate you. One more text. We'll take this from Raider Albert. He says, Q, Max needs help. Seeing Tyree Wilson in person look super slow. Literally took him 1 to 2 seconds of the ball off the ball every snap he played. Was it just me? Raider Albert from Colorado. Thanks for the text, my man. I appreciate you. And, yeah, like I was saying about Tyree earlier, it's not that he's slow. It's just that he's trying to analyze the play, and you can't do that. He's standing there trying to figure out if it's a run or a pass and what he should do to attack. He's just got to go. When the ball is snapped, he's just got to go. And that's something that I guarantee they'll point out to him on film study. That's something that Max Crosby will pull him to the side and be like, hey, dude, just go. Right? There's no time to sit there and analyze. You've got to be able to go. If he sits there and analyzes, he's never going to be effective. Nothing ever good is going to come from that. So he's got to be a lot better than that. So it's not the fact that he's slow. It's just the fact that he's thinking, and that turns you into a slow man. A thinking man, I always say it, is a slow man. So thanks so much for that text. I appreciate you. We got time for one more call. Puerto Rican Raider. He's calling to talk about the win by the Silver and Black and gives his thoughts. Here he goes. Puerto Rican Raider.
What up, Q? It's Puerto Rican Raider down here in South Florida, baby. 1-0, baby, Raiders. Yeah, I just left a bar over here, the Dolphin bar, watching the game. The Dolphin helped us out. They beat the Chargers late. We are in first place, 1-0, and everybody in our division is 0-1. I love it. Love it. We're in first place. The game was tough. We're on the road. Denver, Jacobs, he did what he can do with, limited reps and all that. Jacoby Meyers, let's hope he's okay. He looked like a pretty bad hit, but thank God he walked off the field. But listen, man, it looked, it's the first game and on the road. Thank God we won. We got to correct some. I mean, there were some plays. We didn't get no calls at all, man. There was some controversial call that went the Broncos' way, but we got it done. We got the W. We're 1-0. All I gotta say is, it's Raider time, baby. Just win, baby. Let's go.
Thank you for the call, my man. And look, it's better to be 1-0 than 0-1, right? I mean, I like the fact that the Raiders found a way to win the game, right? It wasn't the most promising looking game, but you knew that they were close enough to win the game. They finally they pulled it out at the end. Cool. Get the W. 1-0 is great. And you have to feel like they're going to get better as the season goes along. Week 4, week 5, probably know a lot about this team by then, right? After the first quarter of the season is over. But 1-0, first place in the AFC West, it's all right by me. That's all you can do, 1 week at a time, one game at a time. So thank you so much for that call, Puerto Rican Raider. I do appreciate you. That's all I got time for on today's show. Coming up tomorrow, I got a text from Raider Nation for Life, Joe from SoCal, a text from Jacob in Fresno. I got a ton more calls I get to as well, plus news and notes. We should hear from head coach Josh McDaniels at some time today. Not too sure exactly when that's going to be, but the Raiders are off to Buffalo. They're getting ready to turn the page and get ready for week 2 of the regular season. So 1-0, one game up, one game down for the Silver and Black, and picked up the victory. So that's all you can really ask for at the end of the day. One in the W column. Sounds good to me. So enjoy Victory Monday, Raider Nation. We'll be back at it tomorrow. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.